Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. Welcome to the retirement ceremony for Rear Admiral Michael Haycock. I am Mr. Ken Burgess, the Executive Director of the Coast Guard Surface Force Logistics Center. It is my honor and privilege to be the master of ceremony for today's event. We hope you have enjoyed the music of the U.S. Coast Guard Band Woodwind Quintet. The color guard participating in today's ceremony is from the Coast Guard Ceremonial Honor Guard. We are pleased to welcome members of Rear Admiral Haycock's family who are joining us here today. Rear Admiral Haycock's wife, Cindy Haycock, daughter Jocelyn, and sons Noah and Wesley. Rear Admiral Haycock's father, James Haycock, from Delavan, Illinois. Mother, Rose Hepp, from Normal, Illinois. Brother, Robert Haycock, Colonel, United States Army, retired, from Oskaloosa, Kansas. Father-in-law, Ed Neiswanger. Mother-in-law, Stephanie Neiswanger, from Hamburg, Michigan. And Rear Admiral Haycock's brother-in-law, Scott Lazarus, and his son, Jeremiah, from Anchorage, Alaska. Cousin, Anthony Haycock, Lieutenant Colonel, United States Army, retired, from Tampa, Florida. Aunt and uncle, Dr. and Mrs. Alfred Bass, from Steamboat Springs, Colorado. And cousins, Steve and Calista Henson, from Charlotte, North Carolina. Today we have some very special guests in our audience who I would like to recognize at this time. The Commandant of the Coast Guard's wife and Ombudsman at Large, Mrs. Dawn Schultz. The 31st Vice Commandant of the Coast Guard, Admiral Charles Ray and his wife Donna. The 27th Vice Commandant of the Coast Guard, Vice Admiral Sally Bryce O'Hara, retired. The Deputy Commandant for Mission Support, Vice Admiral Michael McAllister. The former Director, C4 and Chief Information Officer, Joint Staff, Vice Admiral Marshall Lytle, retired. The Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Navy for Ships, Mr. Frederick Steffen. I also extend greetings to the active retired flag officers, members of the Senior Executive Service, families and friends in the active duty and reserve men and women and civilian employees of the Coast Guard. Welcome one and all, and thank you for joining us for today's retirement ceremony. Retirement ceremonies are a time-honored tradition that formally recognize the completion of honorable service for our military personnel. They mark the departure of our shipmates who have faithfully and diligently served our country in the United States Coast Guard. We are assembled here today to pay tribute to Rear Admiral Michael Haycock, who is retiring after over 34 years of faithful and honorable service to his country. We are honored today to have, presiding over Rear Admiral Haycock's retirement ceremony, the 26th Commandant of the Coast Guard, Admiral KARL SCHULTZ. It is requested that military members follow my directions for honors and remain covered through the invocation. During the national anthem, guests not in uniform should stand facing the flag with the right hand over their heart. Please take all cues from me. I would now like to introduce the member of the official party already on stage, Pastor Louis Schrum from Mid-Atlantic Community Church. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the arrival of the official party and remain standing for the presentation of the colors, singing of the national anthem, and the reading of the invocation. The national anthem will be sung by Lieutenant Commander Alexander Cherry, Sector Maryland National Capital Region, and former Surface Force Logistics Center, Small Boat Product Line, Engineering Branch Chief. Now, Rear Admiral, United States Coast Guard, arriving. Hand salute. Ready, two. Now, Coast Guard arriving. Hand salute. Ready, two. Color guard, present the colors. Hand salute.
Broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets ran glare, the bombs bursting in air gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Color guard, retire the colors. Ready, two. Pastor Schrum will now deliver the invocation.
Good afternoon. I have to say one of my favorite things about Admiral Haycock there, my good friend, is that it's never about Mike when we're together. So I just say it's an honor to be here and to celebrate this great event, and it's a privilege. for sure. So would you go with me now to the Lord? Please bow. Father God, the heavens are declaring the glory this afternoon, and we thank you for Mike. We've watched him over the years live in obedience to your command in Joshua 1:9, to live with strength and courage, to not be timid, to not be discouraged. God, your God, is with you every step you take. So we are grateful for this warrior, this mighty man of God, displayed in his integrity and humble but strong leadership. May today be a celebration of his years of service in the United States Coast Guard. And we invite your blessings, Father God, on today's ceremony. We ask for your guidance, your protection, and your presence, your protection over Mike and his family and all of his colleagues and friends that are gathered here today. Lord God, we pray all this, lift it up to you in the name that's above all names, in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor Schrum. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated and military guests uncovered. At this point, I would like to talk a little bit about Rear Admiral Haycock's career. I would draw your attention to Admiral Haycock's long, diverse, and distinguished career reflected in the operational and mission support assignments listed in the event brochure. Rear Admiral Haycock graduated from the United States Coast Guard in 1985 with a Bachelor of Science degree in engineering. Rear Admiral Haycock is first and foremost a cutterman, and all that entails in our seagoing service. His first assignment after graduating from the Coast Guard Academy was as student engineer and damage control assistant in Polar Star from 1985 through 1987. His subsequent seagoing tours include Assistant Chief Engineer in Botwell from 1977 to 1988, Chief Engineer in Mellon from 1993 to 1995, Chief Engineer in Polar Sea from 1998 to 2000, Executive Officer in Sherman from 2004 to 2006, and Commanding Officer Sherman from 2009 to 2011. Rear Admiral Haycock has also earned a well-deserved service reputation as an engineer's engineer. He earned a Master of Science in Engineering from the University of Michigan and served in several critical mission support positions, including Assistant Section Chief Icebreaker Support Section at the Maintenance and Logistics Command Pacific from 1998 to 1990, Project Manager for the Polar Consular Renewal from 1992 to 1993, Commanding Officer, Naval Engineering Support Unit Honolulu from 1995 to 1998, Deputy Surface Program Manager, Coast Guard Deepwater Program 2000 to 2004, National Security Cutter Program Manager from 2006 to 2009. And finally, as Commander, Surface Force Logistics Center here in Baltimore from 2011 to 2014, where Rear Admiral Haycock's steadfast focus on fleet and customer support became embedded in our organization, and where his personal touch and honorary Chief Petty Officer leadership style was felt both collectively and individually across the command. If I could ask everyone here today from SFLC Yard and all Baltimore area commands, if you could stand and let's give a warm Baltimore welcome back to Rear Admiral Haycock. Rear Admiral Haycock's reputation as a consummate leader was recognized by his selection of flag officer in May of 2014. His flag officer assignments include Coast Guard Assistant Commandant for Engineering and Logistics and Chief Engineer from May 2014 to May 2015, Coast Guard Director of Acquisition Programs for Acquisitions and Chief Acquisition Officer from May 2017 to May 2019, and also Coast Guard Director of Acquisition Programs and Program Executive Officer as well. We want to take this opportunity, sir, to thank you for your role as a pioneer and leader of our community. It is now my distinct honor and privilege to introduce the 26th Commandant of the Coast Guard, Admiral KARL SCHULTZ.
Thanks, Kenny, and good afternoon, everyone. It's a privilege to be here at the Yard on this very important occasion for our service. 34 years in one day. I believe it was on May 22nd, 1985, when Mike Haycock and his esteemed class of 1985 colleagues crossed the stage. I'd say esteemed and obnoxious, but class of 83, my class trained these guys. So if you're not familiar with the class of 85, they had 10 flag officers out of that class. One went on to be our Vice Commandant, First-Star Vice Charles Michelle. We've got Mike McAllister. No, not Mike McAllister, but we've got Linda Fagan, Linda Fagan's a Class 85er, who's got a 3rd star, and then 8 other flag officers at the 1 and 2-star level. That is truly a remarkable class. I think behind the Class 82, and I see a couple 82ers out here, Mark Butt, Pooch O'Day, that's a distinguished. That is a rock star class, and Mike, it is just an honor to be here. You know, I'm going to get myself in trouble because I didn't know Kenny Burgess was the MC today. They cut that out of my program because Kenny's still billing me for rub marks on the floor. Last time I was at this gym, I think I fell playing against the FLC guys after we got humiliated, and he keeps billing me for irreplaceable, irremovable floor marks here. But, and then the pastor said, today's not about Mike, but Pastor Lou, today is about Mike. So we're going to take an exception, carve out a little exception, that today, May 23rd, is about Mike, and it's about Mike's family, and it's about the remarkable career he's had. To all the distinguished guests today, our Vice Commandant and Mrs. Ray, Vice Admiral Bryce O'Hara, our former distinguished Vice Commandant, Mike McAllister, for real this time, our DCMS, Marshall Lytle, who retired recently here as a 3-star, our 13th MCPOG and his bride in the audience, Admiral Galinas from Navy PEO, thank you for being here, Jay Stefani. If you look at who's in the audience today, I think it just, before you even say any words, it really speaks to what Mike Haycock's all about. Mike's a collaborator, he's a partner. It's never about Mike, it's always about the Coast Guard. We're very excited about this recent award of the Polar Security Cutter, and I had a chance to sit with, in the National Security Council meeting with Jay Stefani and Hondo Gertz the other day and some of Mike's folks, and we are excited, and we are really honored. For those of you here, to my other flag colleagues that you're sprinkled all over, flag selects, 06s, senior enlisted leaders, thank you for being here today. It is important that we pause and reflect on this man's career and the contributions of he and his family to the nation. You know, these 34 years and one day have been filled with tireless commitment to excellence, to process improvement, to the men and the women of this organization we call the United States Coast Guard. And Mike's legacy is timeless. It will span way into the 21st century. He's been critical to our fleet recapitalization as much as any one individual in our service. He has left his mark, an indelible mark, on the Coast Guard. And we'll come back and talk a little bit more about that. But I'd like to begin by talking a little bit about Mike's family. And it's a austere group here in the front. Fantastic. Cindy, 25 years in marriage to Mike, coming up on this September here. So that's a big one. Don't forget that one. Don't forget that one. Coming from a guy who might have forgotten that one. It's just a reminder for me because I have a September wedding as well here, and Mike. I also have a connection to this class because I married into the class of 85. Dawn's brother's a 30-year Coast Guard captain, class of 85. This class is special to me, Mike, and you're special among that group. But let me talk a bit about Cindy and Noah and JoJo and Wesley and the extended family. You have been along for this ride for good 2/3 of it here, and it's been quite the ride. But we know, those of us that serve, whether it's the cloth of the Coast Guard or in another uniform service as part of the greatest armed force on the planet, we know that behind every service member, there is a terrific supportive family. And Cindy, you have been the anchor point, the anchor to windward for the Haycock family. Jojo, 8th grader, volleyball, horseback riding, and karate enthusiast and competitor, I understand, from dad and mom. Son Wesley, 11th grader, rising high school senior, Life Scout, working on Eagle, competitive gymnast. We talked a little bit about what's ahead for the summer. Noah, sophomore at Townsend University, and Noah creates clothes, boxing club president, Eagle Scout, employed while he's going to school here and stepping up his hours with his employer this summer. Father James Haycock served in the Air Force, and you know, obviously, as we come in on Memorial Day weekend, thank you, sir, for your service and for raising a son who saw service as viable on his path here as a young adult and now middle-aged adult. Mother Rose Hebb, thank you for sharing your greatest treasure with our nation. Brother Robert, who I met out, ironically, at a wedding or a retirement, another retirement last year in Kansas City. We had a chance a little bit, served in the Army up through the ranks of colonel. Thank you for your service as well, Robert. And we got father and mother-in-law, we got brother and sisters-in-law and cousins. Just fantastic that you're here, because today honors Michael, but it also honors you and your support of Michael's superlative career. You've ridden shotgun on this. Ship tours, long hours, you name it, you've been there, and thank you. And Mike has shown the same level of commitment and dedication that he has to the Coast Guard these 34 plus years to his family. And that's not always easy. You know, when his first child was born, he was on that polar sea tour down at McMurdo Station, pretty far from everywhere. And you know, you get to a point when you're halfway there, you ain't going back. But Michael got word that Noah was soon to be born here. Jumped on a plane through New Zealand to Sydney, to Los Angeles, to Seattle, arriving at the hospital with 4 hours to spare to witness the birth of their first pride and joy, Noah. Now, ironically, number 2 comes along here, Wesley's birth. Turns out it's an emergency C-section, heavy DC traffic, and guess who wasn't there? You probably screwed up by setting the bar so high on Noah by coming halfway around the globe for Wesley. But it all turned out pretty good here. Wesley, you forgive him? You probably didn't know that till now. Yeah. I probably just got you in trouble. And then they chose Seattle as home, where JoJo was born here. And Mike, what a beautiful family you have here. And I hope after 25 years, the DC traffic thing has been forgotten here. But I know to you guys how proud you are of your husband, of your dad, of your son, of your brother, of your cousin, your uncle, and rightfully so. Mike has truly served his Coast Guard and his nation well. And I understand Mike's grandfather, who was a Coast Guard auxiliarist, is really the guy that put a pamphlet in Mike's hand to point them to this thing called what we call the world's best Coast Guard. So we want to thank Grandpop as well for that. Let's take a look back now and talk just a bit about this distinguished 34-year career. Turn back the clock and just look at some of these accomplishments. As an ensign, student engineer, we sort of showed the hand a bit, but the Polar Star, I said the sea, but really when you think of the Polar Star, you know, probably in its infancy, only 15 years short. And now she's 43, long years in the tooth, still in service. But that was a pretty sophisticated engineering platform back at the time. And Mike went on and really just showed his capabilities, his smarts, his team play. He left there and went to be assisting engineering officer. Later down the road on the Boutwell, served as the EO on the Mellon, EO on the Polar Star, engineering officer, and then XO and CO of the Sherman. Not many guys get to be XO and CO of the same ship. And then Mike took it a level further. Mike actually was out in Hawaii, a little bit delayed, and was involved with transferring the Sherman to the Sri Lankan Navy, now the largest ship in the Sri Lankan Navy fleet. But there's a little more to that story, and I'm not sure even Cindy knows that, but I got a picture of this. And this might look like a picture. You can't see in the back, but it's a couple handsome gentlemen, one a Vice Admiral from the Sri Lankan Navy, their head guy, and Mike. Mike's glasses are down on the nose. I don't know why he wears the glasses. It's not possible to look through the glasses when they're hanging off your nose. And ironically, the Sri Lankan Navy Vice Admiral put his glasses down on his nose. It's reported to be official paperwork for the Sri Lankans to take possession of the cutter Sherman, but inside sources told me it's actually official paperwork for Mike to become part of the Sri Lankan Navy and get a third tour on the Sherman. He wants to be Commodore of the Sri Lankan Navy. And we were one flag officer short. We didn't put a flag officer at PCS, and rumors in the headquarters was he's been squeezing the 06 captain, Todd Prestich, to approve that. But we're calling you out, Mike. That ain't going to happen. You're not going back to the Sherman for a third tour. But that's pretty cool when you get to serve 2 tours on a ship and then transfer to another naval service, 52 years young in its life, and it's going to go on to do particularly important things, particularly at this point in time when we look at some of the things that have happened in Sri Lanka and competing power pressures from China and that region of the world. So Mike, good on you. But Mike's ships, just like everything Mike touches, were remarkably successful. On Polar Sea, he helped as engineer that ship steam 55,000 nautical miles to break through dozens of miles of ice to reach McMurdo Station. That's a critically important mission that the Coast Guard supports each and every year. As Sherman's commanding officer, innovative tactics. I'm saying that even for an engineer, became a CO. Innovative tactics. 4 go-fast seizures in one day, one interdiction. Then he went on the next day to interdict a semi-submersible, self-propelled submarine. And they removed 15,000 pounds of cocaine just in that short span of operations. And during that tour, he earned one of the titles that a man of the people obviously holds nearest to his heart. He became an honorary chief petty officer. And Mike, I know that's something that was incredibly well-deserved and very important to you. The crews on those ships interdicted go-fast vessels. They rescued mariners in distress, halted illegal fishermen in the northern seas, and detained human smugglers. And as we talked about with those Polar-class ships, projected U.S. sovereignty in the high-latitude regions. As you can tell, Mike's not just an engineer at heart, but he's a true operator at heart. He's not an engineer and an operator. He is both, a true operator and a true engineer, and a true logistician, and you name it, he's all that. I look at the fleet on the waterfront today, the national security cutters, our Legend-class cutters, flagships of our surface fleet. They're game changers, and Mike's handiwork is written all over that. You heard the talk about his national security assignment. He helped bring those platforms to life, and those ships have contributed just in the last 3 years alone to the removal of 1.3 million pounds of uncut cocaine that was destined for American streets, poison destined for our streets. And Mike, as a ship driver, as a ship repairman, and as a acquirer for future ships, your handiwork is all over that. Thank you. Those platforms replaced those 378s that served for more than 50 years. Mike also helped put that one of those capable former 378s in the hands of Nigeria, really elevating the game and the partnership. And Nigeria now holds 2 of those ships. It doesn't end with the NSCs though. Just this past fall in September, we awarded what's really the largest piece of the whole recapitalization of the Coast Guard fleet, the offshore patrol cutter. Mike helped get that acquisition to the goal line right before the end of the fiscal year. There was a lot of pressure to get that awarded. And obviously as this thing called the partial federal government shutdown came and it played out for 35 plus days. Mike, that was seminal, because I'm not so sure where we would have been on that. And thanks for your leadership there. As I said, an engineer, a cutterman, a logistician, an acquisitions expert. But most importantly, Mike understands people. He values people. He's a shining example of a compassionate, engaged, and devoted leader. You know, during his recent tours, doing things that affect Coast Guard history, the most historic acquisition period in our Coast Guard history, Mike made sure he always set a time on his calendar every day to walk around and engage and talk to those people that are buying ships. He appears to be tireless, but then there are some of your classmates that just can't keep quiet around these times. Kelly Hatfield and John Prince, I was pinging them saying, "What do you tell me about your classmate Haycock?" They said, "Mike told us when he was a CO of the Sherman, he was always tired. Woke up at 6, went to bed at midnight," and they said, "Mike, you know, you're the CO, big decisions come your way, you gotta be rested." And Mike's reclama was, "I wish you told me that when I was a CO of the ship. I was awesome for 24 months. So your classmates always got your back, Mike, remember that. But it wasn't just occasional when Mike would walk around, and it wasn't just the halls of CG9 acquisitions. He was on the ship. He knew about people, their families, their hobbies, their ambitions. He was all about supporting them. And they were all about supporting the team. And collaboratively, that's what the Coast Guard's all about. Mike earned the informal title of the People's Admiral. And Mike, that just says volumes about who you are as a professional, as an individual. And then talking to a subset of those people up in Coast Guard acquisitions, the women that were on his staff. Mike saw an opportunity there where the women were seeking greater opportunities for networking amongst themselves and in broader audience. And he met monthly to offer mentorship, leadership training, and an opportunity for professional development. That's just who Mike is, an innovator leader striving to make our Coast Guard the most inclusive organization it possibly can be. And I thank you for that, Michael. As we move on, we talk about a little more of the specifics within the acquisitions job. Probably the pinnacle of this 34-year career. Just tremendous work, tremendous work. You know, when you're spending that kind of money, there's an implicit bond with the taxpayer. There's a trust that the Coast Guard is expected to hold each and every day, because these are dollars that could go at a lot of national priorities. And Mike has been transparent and ahead of all these issues, all these challenges, that the Coast Guard was in fact spending each and every nickel as smartly and as strategically as possible. I can say with great confidence that there's no better investment of a taxpayer dollar in the Coast Guard. I can say that in large part, Mike, because of your work at Coast Guard Acquisitions, and thank you for that. I have no doubt that Mike's 34 years have left an indelible mark upon the Coast Guard and the Coast Guard's future, but more importantly, on specific Coast Guard men and women. Whether they're men and women that wear the uniform, whether they're civilian employees, contractors that breeze through sometimes for weeks on end, sometimes come back on contract after contract, years on end. But Mike, you have made a difference in each and every one of those Coast Guard modern total workforce individuals' lives. And for that, we are appreciative. In your retirement, I'm hoping you find a little more time for your family, because it wasn't just those ship tours when Mike was up tirelessly. Mike was in the office late every night, particularly here as these key acquisitions got in the goal line. And one of the things that Mom and Dad asked me to announce today, because I'm not so sure it's known, is as I was talking, Noah's got some work and we're hoping he's got a flexible boss, and JoJo wasn't sure and Wesley wasn't sure, but Mom and Dad just announced that you might be going on a cruise this summer. That was unbeknownst to you a little bit here. How about that, Wesley, huh? The Caribbean cruise in August. So listen, that doesn't get you off the hook for a job all summer, but it gets you off the hook for a job at least a week or so in August. So good on you guys, and congratulations on that. So Mike, more time to ride your motorcycle, more time with family, practice some of that jiu-jitsu. I want to hear who's the mixed martial art champion, JoJo, at the reception between you and Dad here a little bit, all right? I got to think you got a little speed advantage on the soon-to-be approaching 45-year-old retired two-star admiral, but we'll talk about that in private. More time to attend Washington Capitol games. Next year we'll be back in the playoffs. Less time drinking Dr. Pepper. That's a little bit of a warning. That's a little bit inside joke, but Mike had a little episode where they hauled him out for maybe working too many hours and drinking too many Dr. Peppers, so we're putting you on a Dr. Pepper restriction in retirement, Mike. So I just want to say to the family, to Michael Haycock, thank you for your tremendous leadership, for your service to our great nation, for the indelible mark you've left on the United States Coast Guard, and those men and women have had the privilege of serving alongside of you. And I think another little surprise we're going to ask her, but Noah, I understand I'm to invite you up here just to say a couple words on today's momentous occasion. Noah?
Can you hear me? It's the first time speaking into a mic. So I'm going to try to keep this brief, and I'll preface this by saying I speak for both my brother and my sister when I say this. So I want to talk about our perspective of Mike Haycock. Most of you probably know him as a coworker or a peer, but to us, he's Dad. It's pretty simple. He has and continues to teach us how to be productive workers, effective leaders, and most importantly, good people, among other things. He leads by example, always thinking about how his actions will affect others. And without him, I wouldn't have the leadership skills I have today. I wouldn't have been a patrol leader or a senior patrol leader in my Boy Scout troop. My brother wouldn't be a senior patrol leader. My sister wouldn't be a leader on her volleyball team and in other areas. I certainly wouldn't be an Eagle Scout. We are proof of his influence and the effectiveness of his leadership style. More importantly, though, he does the things that fathers don't always get right. I didn't think that was going to be that much of a zinger, but he's always supportive of our activities and our goals. He's always engaged in what we're doing. I just kind of wanted to tell a little bit of a story here. So in my freshman year of high school, I decided to play ice hockey. It's important to know that I never ice skated in my life at that point, so bit of a big decision. And I told my dad, and all he said was, okay, no questions asked. So we got to work. He brought me to the rink every week during the summer, taught me how to skate, pushed me to do my best. And I played out the freshman year, and I loved it. And then after that year, I decided to be a goalie. So, whole different skill set. Again, told my dad, okay, let's get to work. That's all he said, no questions asked. So we got goalie gear, and he spent hours upon hours with me in the living room with all my goalie gear on, just taking shots on me, pushing me to get through it and figure it out. And I've been a goalie ever since, and he hasn't missed a game that he could make. Even this year, I decided to take up boxing. And the first thing he said after I let him know that was, when you take your first fight, let me know and I'll be there. Let me find my spot on my page again. I have plenty of other stories like that. It goes the same for both my brother and sister. Boy Scout campouts, horseback competitions, gymnastic meets, volleyball games, hockey games, hopefully some fights pretty soon. He's there for it all to support us. And that's something that we really appreciate about him, and something I'll take with me when I become a dad. So I really just wanted to talk about the support he's given us and how he continues to mold us into good people. I feel like I buttered him up pretty good. So with that being said, I just want to say, Dad, we appreciate all you've done for us. We are proud of you. We're excited to support you in your next endeavor, and most of all, we love you.
Admiral, could you please join the Commandant so we can recognize you more formally? Military guests, attention to award. Citation to accompany the award of the Coast Guard Distinguished Service Medal to Rear Admiral Michael J. Haycock, United States Coast Guard. Rear Admiral Haycock is cited for exceptionally meritorious service to the government of the United States in a position of great responsibility as Assistant Commandant for Acquisitions and Chief Acquisition Officer, U.S. Coast Guard Headquarters, Washington, D.C. from April 2017 to May 2019. Culminating a distinguished career spanning over 3 decades, Rear Admiral Haycock directed wide-ranging acquisition services, contracting operations, and program management representing a $2 billion Department of Homeland Security annual investment portfolio. He skillfully chaired and expertly positioned the Executive Oversight Council to provide effective oversight of programs and shape enterprise investment priorities in a dynamic budget climate, overseeing delivery of impressive new assets, technologies, and capabilities to the operational commanders that enhance maritime domain awareness and national security. Rear Admiral Haycock orchestrated the management execution of $1.8 billion for 3 additional national security cutters, a $2 billion contract award for the offshore patrol cutter design and construction, acceleration of the polar security cutter acquisition to support national strategic objectives, and fielding the Coast Guard's first unmanned aircraft system, delivering transformational intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance as a force multiplier, resulting in the interdiction of 18,000 kilograms of narcotics in 2017 and 18. His unyielding commitment to delivering cyber agile assets to the front line and supporting units resulted in the Coast Guard's first successful cybersecurity assessment of a major operational asset and significantly improved the agency's enterprise network security posture. His unparalleled vision will have transformational impacts on mission execution well into the 21st century. Rear Admiral Haycock's leadership, dedication, and devotion to duty are most heartily commended and are in keeping with the highest traditions of the United States Coast Guard. Military guests and all guests, please be seated. I would now like to ask Mrs. Cindy Haycock to join the Commandant and Rear Admiral Haycock on stage to accept a small token of recognition for the support she has provided her husband over his years of service. The Commandant will now present a certificate of appreciation to Mrs. Cindy Haycock. The citation reads as follows. Certificate of appreciation for the United States Coast Guard. To all who shall see these presents, greetings. This is to certify that Mrs. Cindy Haycock has earned grateful appreciation for her unselfish, faithful, and devoted service during her husband's Coast Guard career. Her unfailing support and understanding helped to make possible her husband's lasting contribution to the nation. Signed, KARL L. SCHULTZ, Admiral, U.S. Coast Guard, Commandant. Jocelyn, Noah, and Wesley, would you please join your parents on stage? The Commandant will now present a certificate of appreciation to Rear Admiral Haycock's daughter Jocelyn and sons Noah and Wesley. The citation reads as follows. To all ye who shall see these presents, greetings. It is my pleasure to express the grateful appreciation of the United States Coast Guard to you for the contributions you have made to your father's service to our nation. You should know that your father's successful career has been challenging and has required an unselfish devotion to service to others. His outstanding performance has directly improved the safety of our society, and the security of our nation, and has been vital to ensure the well-being of your future. Your understanding has been essential to success. The United States Coast Guard thanks you for your service. Signed, KARL L. SCHULTZ, Admiral, U.S. Coast Guard, Commandant. Commandant will now present Admiral Haycock with a Presidential Certificate of Appreciation from our Commander-in-Chief. The citation reads as follows. For service in the Armed Forces of the United States of America, Rear Admiral Michael Haycock, I extend to you my personal thanks and sincere appreciation of our grateful nation for your contribution of honorable service to our country. You have helped maintain the security of the nation during a critical time in its history with a devotion to duty and a spirit of sacrifice in keeping with the proud traditions of the military service. I trust that in coming years, you will maintain an active interest in the armed forces and the purpose for which you have served. Those who follow in your footsteps will draw inspiration from your commitment, dedication, and sacrifices made to ensure the protection of our American freedoms. My best wishes to you for happiness and success in the future. Signed, Donald J. Trump, Commander-in-Chief. The Commandant will now present Rear Admiral Haycock with a certificate of appreciation from the Governor of the State of Maryland. The citation reads as follows. Greetings. Be it known that on behalf of the citizens of this state, in recognition of your 34 years of dedicated and outstanding service on behalf of the United States Coast Guard, and in honor of the high level of professionalism, leadership, and integrity you have demonstrated throughout your distinguished career, and as the people of Maryland join in expressing our great respect, admiration, and sincere best wishes on the occasion of your retirement. We are pleased to confer upon you this Governor's citation, given upon my hand and the Great Seal of the State of Maryland, this 23rd day of May, 2019. Signed, Governor Larry Hogan. The Commandant will now present Admiral Haycock his retirement certificate. The citation reads as follows. To all who shall see these presents, greetings. This is to certify that Rear Admiral Haycock, having been retired after honorable service in the United States Coast Guard, is awarded the testimonial as acknowledgement of duty faithfully performed during a period of over 34 years. Done this day, in the year of our Lord, 2019, signed, KARL L. SCHULTZ, U.S. Coast Guard, Commandant. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now my great honor to present Rear Admiral Michael Haycock, United States Coast Guard, retired.
Well, good afternoon. The Commandant was having trouble recognizing me without my glasses. And since that's the second time he's mentioned this in about a week and a half, I figured I better get back in uniform. So I wondered if I would be able to hold it together for this thing. And as I look in the audience and I see all the people who've come, it's humbling. So I'd like to thank you for doing that, because I know a lot of you got day jobs, and people have come, families come from as far as Anchorage, Alaska. I see shipmates that I served with years and years and years ago. I think I see Arnie Abbas back there. We served in Mellon, that was like 25 years ago, a long time. And I look at other tours I've been on, and I've got people that I served with in the Deepwater program, classmates I went to the academy with. I'm truly humbled that you would come and celebrate this with me today. So thank you so much for doing that. You know, in my career, I preside over a lot of retirements. And there's one thing I've learned through doing those things is there's three people that attend these events. There's those who attend with the intent of celebrating a transition for the retiree, to celebrate that sort of thing. There's those that come for the free food. And then there's those who can't sleep unless they personally witness that person leading the service. So as I look out in the audience, I am shocked by how many sleep-deprived people are out there. So again, thank you all for coming. I've known this is coming for a while, and I've thought long and hard during the other retirement ceremonies I've done. What do people say? What would I say? I was having a conversation with a couple of my shipmates that go to the same church, Commander McBride and Commander Connor, a couple weekends ago, and they were saying, is your speech ready? And have you practiced it? And I said, no, I'll worry about the night before. And they're like, sir, the worst retirements to go to are the ones where the retiree says, well, I haven't gotten any prepared remarks. And then they wander off tributaries, and hours later, you're still there. So for Commander McBride and Connor, I saw you over here. I've got prepared remarks. Okay? So I will try to stay on tack here. So I understand there's a betting pool in place on how long I'm going to speak, and another betting pool on whether I'm going to get all choked up while I'm up here. So I think the odds makers have put the odds in favor of long-winded and emotional. So if you put your money on the favorites, I'm sorry to disappoint you. So while this is probably my last chance to stand up, wax eloquently or not, and share my perspectives, and I'm tempted to take advantage of that opportunity. The truth is that unless I do something or say something shockingly controversial, you're not going to remember what I have to say. It's kind of like second place, vice presidents, that sort of thing. No one remembers them, right? And I've had 34 years to talk about my perspectives and my thoughts. And so most of you, I think, already know them. And I don't know that my repeating them here is going to do anything for any of us. So I'm going to do what ultimately needs to be done today, and that is to thank those of you who have contributed to me standing before you today. So I need to start at the top and thank the Creator. I've had some great opportunities, and I've worked with some incredible people. And it wasn't random. It's part of a plan. And so I thank God for those precious opportunities. Next on the list is I got to thank my family. So, my parents, grandparents, uncles and aunts, my siblings and cousins have all contributed to my value system and my perspective. And I wouldn't be here, and I wouldn't have had the successes that I've had without that influence. Next is my wife and my children, who have made incredible sacrifices and endured hardships, deployments, long hours, that sort of thing, that have enabled me to serve our country and our Coast Guard. So I thank you for your support, because I couldn't have done it without you. And then finally, I come to my professional family members. Now, I could mention each of you by name, and if I spent 15 seconds talking about every one of you, and I think we had like 380 RSVPs. So as an acquisition professional, I'm going to round that down to a palatable 300. If you do the math, that would take me 95 minutes to cover everybody. And that means you'll be sitting there fighting the symptoms of sleep deprivation for an hour and a half so you can be mentioned for 15 seconds, and I'm not going to put you through that. So I'm going to summarize this. It takes a village to raise an idiot. You guys are my village. So thank you for making the Coast Guard such a great place to work. The service is a fantastic organization, and that's because each of you puts the needs of the service and the needs of its members above your own needs. And I never would have received the promotions or the opportunities I've had without your support. And folks, this is not false humility. I'm a realist. I know that teams are successful when the members step up to cover their weaknesses. So, Derek Smith, I think I saw you in the audience. What kind of admiral am I, Derek? I'm a low-maintenance admiral. How do you know that, Derek? So Derek was my executive. Eric was my executive assistant, and I used to tell him over and over again, I'm a low-maintenance admiral. He'd just kind of smile and nod, right? So I'm here to admit, Derek, although you don't need to hear it, and probably most of you don't need to hear it, but you probably need to hear me say it. I am not a low-maintenance admiral. The medal the Commandant put on my uniform isn't a result of my hard work. It's a result of your hard work. It is hard work making me look good. and you guys have made it look easy. So thank you for being strong where I was weak. Thank you for your patience and for your loyalty. I am proud, or I am who you have made me to be, which means that if you don't like who I become, it's all your fault. So to address the other pool that's going on, I'm generally a positive guy. And so while retirements generally are a double-edged sword, where you have to balance the joy of someone transitioning to a new phase in their life and offset that with the sadness of someone leaving the family, that sort of thing, I choose to focus on the positive. So while my departure from the service is a goodbye, it's a temporary goodbye. You're not so lucky as to be bidding me a permanent farewell. So we're still family, and while you won't see me as often, I'm still around. And so I would tell you, you don't know how lucky you are in this case, because trust me, by the end of the summer, my wife is going to be trying to figure out how I can retire from retirement. So she doesn't have to see me as often, right? So in the program is my contact information. So it's got my phone number, it's got my email address. I got a new email address, so it's not clogged with spam, easy to remember, it's there. And so let's not call this goodbye, let's just say, see you later, all right? So that's it, no meandering remarks swayed by pretty colors and squirrels. Just a heartfelt thank you for your tireless support. And there's a lot of you. And you come from all walks of life. You know, we got people from the Navy here. We got people that were contracted team members that covered my back and kept me successful. We got people from engineering. We got people from acquisitions. Wouldn't be here without you. So thank you for that. So to wrap things up and keep it short so we can get to the reception, I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge a few people for their efforts today. So if you would please join me in thanking the Coast Guard Band Quintet, Commander Lexi Cherry for her rendition of the National Anthem, the tireless efforts by Captain Mark Moore, who's a project officer for this, and for Lieutenant Dolan here at the Yard, who is the project officer up here, the MWR team for putting all the arrangements together, the Coast Guard Yard for letting me host this up here, and our MC for making this such a great event. If you would help me, thank you. So final comment before I surrender the dais here. And this is just a reminder to my wife. So I'm indebted to you for your tireless support. I think it's important to remember that while I may be retiring, I'm still the Admiral. So thank you all for decades of support. Thanks for joining me here today and celebrating this with my family and I. It means more to me than you can possibly imagine. And so let's get to that reception.
Please be seated. By tradition, military shadow boxes were originally simple boxes in which sailors retiring from shipboard service carried their belongings ashore. Superstition held that if the sailor's shadow touched shore before he set foot upon it, he would suffer ill luck. By carrying his belongings, a metaphorical shadow of himself enclosed within the box, he could ensure he would touch land before his shadow. Rear Admiral Vavadich and Rear Admiral Select Schofield will present Admiral Haycock his shadow box, which is inside the sea chest. The flag in the sea chest was flown over Coast Guard Cutter Mellon, Coast Guard Cutter Polar Sea, Coast Guard Cutter Polar Star, Coast Guard Headquarters, the Coast Guard Surface Force Logistics Center, and Coast Guard Yard. This national ensign which you have so proudly served is the true emblem of our unity, power, and purpose as a nation. The sword is a rite of passage for the commissioning of an officer and a symbol of leadership throughout his or her career. An officer never surrenders their sword, and this box shall keep it safe and serve as a constant reminder of the faithful service to our country in the United States Coast Guard. Ms. Lisa Kirkpatrick and Mr. Doug Henke will present Rear Admiral Haycock with this sword box. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please rise? The military members, please cover for the reading of the benediction and remain standing for the playing of Semper Paratus and departure of the official party.
What a beautiful tribute. What a privilege it was to be here. Let's thank our God in heaven for this. Father, we just thank you for these amazing people, the leadership that served with Mike. May the gracious words spoken today bring more encouragement and satisfaction in the years ahead. Help him put into practice everything he has learned in his Coast Guard career. Grant him success as he continues to grow and prosper, finding favor with both man and you, Father God. And we just pray all this now in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Now, Coast Guard departing. Hand salute. Ready, two. Bosun, stand by to pipe a shipmate going ashore. Now, Rear Admiral, Coast Guard, retired, departing. Hand salute. Ready, two. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes today's ceremonies. On behalf of the men and women of the United States Coast Guard, and on behalf of Rear Admiral Haycock and his family, thank you for sharing today's ceremony. You're all invited to a reception.